a kingdom of secrets and a game of lies. I loved her as she loved me, fierce as a bloodied blade. Now I was queen, a wolf in my own right. I held the chess pieces. It was time to use them. I've heard interesting rumors. This was my crossroads.
Well, now this is weird, but also wonderful. My name is Dave O'Callaghan. You may know me from previous movies as the Easton Children's and Young Adult Book Buyer. You may know me from Department 51 launch host, or you may know me as now Zoomy or Zoom newbie. And whenever you're going to do something in style, this is the book to do it on. It's very exciting and very thrilling to have tonight's author of a book, which we will talk about, Queen of Coin and Whispers. And not only is the book amazing, but the author is absolutely fabulous. Will you please welcome Helen Corcoran? There
Hello.
she is. Hello. Well,
How are you?
I am good. This is different. Yeah,
It's not the plan.
Yeah, it's. But you know what? We're shaking with it. We're going with it.
Yeah.
This must feel like the longest goodbye or hello, because obviously getting to be an author, all going through the years, coming to the DEPCONs, all the chats, working away, you finally get your book, signed up, you get published, and then everybody goes, no, lock it down. How has this been for you?
Yeah, 2020 had it in for me. I look fondly back at myself on New Year's Eve going, you sweet summer child, you had no idea. Lockdown's been okay.
Yeah.
I'm still working from home. So things are fine, and that way we made it work. And
Yeah.
everything went a bit weird, but the book's out.
Yes.
It's in shops, people have read it, so that's the main thing. That's what I kept focusing on. The book got out. It may not have been how we planned, but it's there.
Yeah, no,
so.
it's between stores, everywhere, and online, it's like it's finally, you kind of must have been, like, because there was so much movement on the book trade side, things were shooting everywhere, and so it's great to finally touch paper, it's great. So normally in these circumstances, I would waffle on and talk to you and have a list of questions. However, we did a shout out to the Twitter, and in fairness, they've done all the work, which is amazing because the questions are absolutely fantastic. So what we'll do is we will go through the questions. I will attempt to call out the Twitter handles correctly, and if I'm wrong, so be it. And then at the end of all that, we will pick 3 winners who will win a lovely tote bag, which we'll show later. So should we get to some questions before we launch it officially? Okay, so this comes from @LoveFades. How does it feel to finally be able to share characters with the world? And how did you come up with the title for the book? And did it have another name first? So let's go with how does it feel to finally be out there, which we kind of touched on there.
It's a relief.
Yeah.
They've been with me for so long. They've been in my head for long that it's a relief, but it was really nerve-wracking when the book first came out because you hope people will like them. It's really nice that it's out.
And how long
it did have a
How long were Leah and Zania? Zania or Zania? This is important.
Zania.
How long have they been?
They showed up in late 2013, so they've been with me for a long while, 6 years and a bit. It did have a different title. The original title was called Deep Rose, and it was literally a city name. It was the name of the capital city, and I got it from a fantasy place name generator.
Yeah.
And it did work into the world building. It's why Adara's symbol is a rose, but everyone hated the title except me. So I finally bowed to pressure. And we came up with the current one. I was at a writer's conference and I was with a bunch of friends, and we all sat down and we made out a list of nouns, adjectives, and verbs, all relating to like the book, and we literally just went back and like forth. So I do like the title because it references both Leah as queen and Zanya as her treasury work and her spy work. So it does involve both of them, which I do like.
Don't worry for anybody else. We will get to the. Well, actually, probably should do an Here's me jumping as usual. As you know, with these things, I jump all over the place. But do you want to give a very, very brief description of what the book is without spoiler, just so people understand what they're about to read?
Queen of Coin and Whispers is a young adult fantasy novel with political intrigue. It is about Leah, a newly crowned idealistic queen who falls for Zanya, her new spy master who's taken the job to avenge her murdered father.
Simpler times. Okay, question 2 comes from J.P. Perschetti. Let's go with that. What's the most important thing you've learned about writing while working on Queen?
I would say the biggest thing that I've learned is to constantly try and remember why I wanted to write this book and why it's important to me. And not just in terms of writing it and querying agents and getting it published, but also to keep that in mind when the book is actually out. Because I can't control how people take it, whether they like it, whether they feel I wrote the book that they were expecting. But if I feel I've written the book that I wanted to read and that it matches what I wanted to write, then I've still succeeded.
Yeah, oh, cool. At Miss Emmalou asks, did you find that building your fictional world was a difficult process, or did the details flow as though the world already existed and you just had knowledge of it?
This answer horrifies a lot of people, but I keep a lot of my world building in my head, and that it's just there when I need it. So I didn't do all those questionnaires where you fill out 50 answers to get an idea of your world. There's two kind of examples that Stephen King on writing refers to it as excavating fossils, and that he just digs and brushes and the details are all there. And that does feel like similar to me a little bit. There's also the Victoria Schwab does the four pot boiler where she has different ideas simmering, and that also I spend a lot of time thinking, so the world is kind of building in my head.
And just off that, I always refer to it as a murder wall, but like for the sake of the world and not mixing up things, or is it all in your head, or do you have like obviously your file of just so I don't get my facts wrong when I'm on book 3? Or...
Not really. For the political intrigue, I did have to keep a list of who was involved and the different strands and who was allied with who and who was working against who and who was double crossing who while they were working with who. Yeah. So that was really the one thing I had to kind of keep track, because I didn't do it well at the start at all. But for everything else, I kind of had a few notes just of things I knew were important and they had to make it into the book, but everything else was just muddling around in my head. It sounds like horrible, I know.
No, would you stop? Would you go with that? Sure, that's a natural. We all muddle around. @_review wants to know, what was your favorite world building detail to put together?
I think it would be the midwinter mythology with Lady Winter and her companions Twilight and Night, because I know a lot more of that old religion than actually goes into the book, because it's on par kind of with our own mythology where it's there but you don't really think about it every day. So I like that there's a hint of their old religion, and you get the sense that they could be people. They might have been real, or were they just a bunch of slightly more extraordinary people who got turned into these myths? And I like that. You get a sense.
@Royal Bookshelf wants to know, did you find it difficult or easy to keep up with the two different POVs point of view?
Yeah, no, I knew from the start it would be a back and forth between them. If I could write the book again, I probably wouldn't have stuck to that pattern so rigidly, because it did mean that I had to kind of make sure that the plot was still flowing evenly.
Yeah.
But no, it was fine. And by the time I'd written them, I had a good sense that they do both sound quite formal, but there is still differences in their own narration voices as well.
And I suppose one thing, because the pacing was like they're very different but similar, and obviously, but the pacing must be different because you're going from that kind of action-packed kind of one side to, well, I suppose they were both action-packed, but that to me I found fascinating, that you kind of go from the possibility of you falling into someone else's head by mistake.
Yeah. Well, Leah is slightly more formal and detached, even in her own point of view, and because of her position, a lot of her stuff is more like a battle of wits, whereas Zania is much more forceful, and a lot of the big changes happen because of her. So
yeah, cute. At Sinead Creedon wants to know, which character did you come up with first?
Leah and Zania came into my head within about 5 minutes of each other. Leah was first because I had been thinking about writing a princess who wanted to be queen, who knew what she was getting herself into. And I knew she would fall in love with another woman, but I wasn't quite sure. At first it was a courtier, but then I realized it would probably, like, a queen spy master would be like a really good trope, and then kind of Zania just showed up. So I did get a hold of Leah's character a bit quicker.
Yeah.
But they both kind of walked in at the same time.
And caused chaos. At Jix Books wants to know, a two-part question. We'll go through. Do you use any type of personality test to sort your characters as in MBTI or Enneagrams?
No, don't use that at
all. And the second question is, if your characters were dropped into the Hunger Games, who would survive? And you can only choose one now.
I would say Truth. Truth would survive to the bitter end, because he has that ability to ally himself with people, but he would kill anyone in his paths. Diana would also probably survive. The rest would probably survive to the latter stages with alliances, but I'm not quite sure if they'd make it to the very end. Lee and Zania would probably do it. Katniss and Peeta, both of us are none kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like Truth would be a games master.
Truth would just Truth would just be chaos. Truth would just be, if you let him into something like the arena, he'd just go mad.
Okay, at LGBTQ Month asks, what is your favorite part of writing and what was your least favorite?
I love the later editing stages when it feels more like a book. You've done the drafting, you've done the really horrible editing passes when you've had to do the big work, you've had to throw out chunks. My least favorite is probably, I'm not a huge fan of drafting. You have to do it because you need a book, but I think because I draft so soon after having finished a book that's at the latter stages, and the difference between them is just very striking. You kind of forget that other book had to get through all that process, and that your first drafts aren't perfect. So
where are we going now? So at Rachel Sartenspo, do you plot out your story before you start writing, or just start and see where it takes you, or is it a mixture of both?
I always have a vague idea of a beginning, middle, or end. I'm pretty open about the fact that I didn't plan the political intrigue in Queen well at all at the start, and it took about 2 drafts to fix that shambles. I'm revising and writing 2 other books right now, and they're both quite different. One, there's more of an external plot attached to emotional arcs, and the other kind of lower stakes, it's more character driven. So the one with the external plot had to have a really strong structural outline that was 6 pages long and a bit, whereas the other one, it was a much more condensed, vaguer outline, because it was more I needed to write and see what the actual characters were going to do with the bare bones I'd given them. So I guess the answer is every book is different.
Yeah, cool. At Jabberwocky 888 wants to know, how many drafts did Queen of Coin Whispers take from beginning to end?
I think it's 6. I think they've all blurred together a bit, and there was smaller drafts where I didn't have to change as much. I think O'Brien got draft 5, and then I think we published draft 6. I think. Well, it wasn't a draft by then; it was the end, but yeah.
Yeah, 6. Oh God. At Laura Eats Books. Now, this is a long question, but a wordy question because it's. So, I love that Leah and Xenia's parents were not only protective of their daughters, but also respected them as people and were really supportive. As I find parental figures in a lot of YA books tend to be either absent or disinterest and don't know what's really happening. How important was it for you that Leah and Xenia have a supportive family around them, even though they sometimes feel it's against them in the world?
So I have very strong opinions about parents in YA fiction and I think the difference is in contemporary or fantasy, there can be real reasons in contemporary why, a parent isn't around. That, you need the book to happen and you need the parents to not interfere as much. But I always kind of find it funny because you spend as a teenager, I end up spending a lot of time with my family because you live like with them. But in the fantasy world, I knew that Leah and Xenia were teenagers in a fantasy world, so they were a bit more serious and grown up than teenagers in our world. But I also knew that they were in positions of power where they would have to interact with a lot of adults. So I knew there would be adults that they would have to interact with. In terms of their own family, I also knew because of, Xenia's not married and Leah has spent a lot of her upbringing with her mother. I knew that I couldn't just shove them off because they'd be too involved, and you couldn't. Leah is still quite young and unmarried, like as well. So it was a bit like the Queen Victoria situation with her own mother, that there was such a tight hold, but less of a warring relationship. Leah and her mother don't always see eye to eye, but they do care about each other deeply.
Yep.
Xenia's stepfather was really important. I really wanted to subvert the evil step parent trope with him, and he's probably the least dysfunctional adult in the book. Yeah. He's just a nice guy, and I really like him. He has like a little fan club, which I like.
And with that kind of leads into which secondary or minor character was the most fun for you to write?
I would say it was probably. I do like her stepfather, but he's not in a lot. I really liked Diana because I really wanted to have a female heavy cast and to have them in different roles of power, but you don't quite notice it until Diana shows up and she kind of just stomps in, and she is completely self-assured. She knows exactly who she is. She knows how to navigate different situations. So she's different to a lot of the older cast who are quite cautious. So I really like that about her.
She's great, all right. Her and of the they're not even back because they're so much, but her and Truth, I absolutely funny you mentioned them in the Hunger Games. I just thought they were fascinating characters because they literally have no idea where they're going to go next or who they're going to side they're going to jump.
No, beyond this current book, Xenia and Truth have like a letter writing relationship where Truth really doesn't get out of their lives as much. So he and Xenia have a very interesting relationship as she gets like older. So he keeps his eye on things.
Yeah, from afar. At David_Deddy, a bit of Sophie's choice question, but do you have more of an affinity to Leah or Xenia, or are they both your children and loved equally?
I couldn't choose between them. They both bring their own bits to the plot, and they both have bits of me in them. Like all the characters have bits in me in them, even the really awful ones, because they all come out of my head. But Leah and Xenia have either bits of me or traits that I would really like to have had. So
at right Starlight, did you listen to any music while writing the book, or do you have any songs that relate to the story?
Yes, I do a writing playlist for every single book, which is either songs that make me think of the characters, or the lyrics are similar, or they're just instrumental music that has that vibe. So I have a playlist on Spotify. If you just type in Queen of Coin and Whispers, it shows up, and it's done mostly in chronological order. I would say there's a song in particular, War of Hearts by Ruel, which was in the Shadowhunters, the season 1 of the TV show. It's during the wedding scene, and that's the song that I think of when during like the midwinter dance. I listened to that song on repeat for every time I worked on that scene. So I hear that song and I think of the book.
Because when I read, I like to listen to music, but I listen to soundtracks when I'm reading, not when I'm writing. And I know a lot of writers do that because there's lyrics involved. So when you're writing, you don't, or the playlist is that just for? So the playlist is for when the book. But do you listen when you're writing, or is that a no?
Yeah, no, I listen when I write and when I'm doing a kind of lighter editing, but when I'm doing really heavy structural editing, I can't listen to music. But even when I'm thinking about the book, I'll put on the playlist list because it just keeps my head in it. I can't write in silence at all. Like I miss coffee shops a lot because it has the ideal level of ambient background noise that you can actually ignore. But I usually listen like to music like as well if I can get Spotify working.
Well, the Light of the Seven was my backdrop from the Game of Thrones, Ramin Djawadi. Because if
Yes,
that's not a Queen of Kind of Whispers music,
I
I don't know
know.
what. It's just haunting, but almost 80s hair pop. I don't know what, but it's just beautiful, and it to me it fit in for my backdrop anyway. That's me.
Yeah, like that he's just an amazing composer.
Yeah.
I love him.
At ex libris noctum wants to know what writing rituals release Wadrick. What writing rituals do you have, and do you make music playlists for your stories and per character or per scene?
The the writing playlist, it's a bit of everything, as I've said. It's either mood or character or particular scene. I try to do them chronologically ish, but I know there's other writers who are much more strict. I don't really do writing rituals because I spent so long working in bookshops and writing like around them. You just don't have that time. I do love writing in coffee like shops, so I'm used to having like a drink beside me. And I've had to relearn a lot of that in the last couple of months because cups are no longer an option. So I do try to write in the morning if I can, and it's a holdover from when I used to work in the book club shop because the day could go really wrong or it would be really stressful and you wouldn't have the energy to write after work. So I used to try and get it done before.
So 2 more questions. This is from not from at Jabberwocky888, but it's from at Jabberwocky88 on behalf of Alison, who is in brackets not on Twitter. So the romance novelist who brings our heroines together, is she based on a real writer? And if not, is there any chance you, Helen, might write this pirate adventure romance novel? Is there any chance? Go do that first, yeah.
She's about the 5th person to ask like me that. Everyone wants to like to read that actual romance novel. She's not based on a real writer per se. There is a historian in Queen who's kind of vaguely based on like Herodotus, and that she just wandered around collecting like oral history. And I liked the idea of her having a sister at the same time who became really popular for writing essentially romantic novels. So sometimes I think I might write it for fun, but it would be a proper adult romance novel, which doesn't quite fit into my brand as such. So I'm not sure if it would work. But if I have time, like whenever, I might write it for fun. We'll see.
And also asks, is there any chance of a sequel that explores the world of Eshvan in greater detail?
I don't know if I'll get to write a sequel exactly. It might happen or might not. If I do, it wouldn't be set in that country specifically, but you would get to learn more about the other countries and what's happened in them since Queen. It depends. I'd like to write it, but it's not entirely up to me, so we'll see.
Okay. And then the final question from Ad Rowie. Who would be interesting question. Who would be the first to solve the mystery when watching a detective film? Xenia?
Zanya.
Yeah. Well,
Zanya would.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
you just jumped. So it's absolutely 100%.
Leah would probably agree with her or disagree, and then she'd make her explain her whole reasoning, and then they'd see it at the end if she was right. So I think it would be a great test of their like relationship if they could keep watching like the detective shows together.
Well, funny enough, I was finishing on a detective quote from a certain Benoit Blanc, if anybody who knows that is, and it's basically, I do declare that the Queen of Coin and Whispers is now officially launched.
Yay, thank you.
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for sending in those questions to Twitter. Some absolutely fantastic questions. Like, it just makes my life so much easier. And all the pressure is on Helen, poor old Helen. So out of those questions, we have 3 winners. We've picked 3 winners, and what they get is a pin, which is this little dagger. Don't get my T-shirt, just a pin, and then also a tote bag. And the winners are, sorry, Jabberwocky888, but it's Alison True, Jabberwocky88, which was a fantastic question about the romance novel. There was at Rurui, who I'm just having trouble saying today, which was the detective film question. And finally was Laura Eats Books with a great question about the protective parents and stuff. So congratulations. There was, tote bags and stuff going to you. O'Brien Press will send them out to you. And thanks again. So Helen, just what, I obviously know you well from the book trade, and we've been wandering around the world of YA and children's books for years. You've come to DEPCON as both a pundit and hurled abuse at those authors, thrown peanuts at them. And then you've obviously made the leap onto the stage. And here we are, like the book is finally here. This must be bizarre, I know everybody wants to be a writer, everybody needs to be a writer, and everybody wishes to be a writer, but it's here, the physical copy is available, so it must be just surreal, but delighted.
Yeah, like it was really weird when the book came out because we were still in lockdown and bookshops were still closed, but I got to see Queen in an actual bookshop last weekend, and it was just really weird to see it in person, just sitting beside other books and other names that I recognized. I do remember every DEPCON, like I sometimes I take notes depending on the kind of talk that was like going on, and every year I'd write down, next year I will finally have an agent, or next year I'll get one step like closer. So last year was really special. I don't really remember most of it, and I couldn't feel my legs through most of that like event, but it was really nice to kind of happen, and especially with everything this year, I'm really glad last year like happened. So
we got it done because we don't know what's going on this year.
Oh God.
And no, and it's a brilliant achievement. I absolutely adored it. I'm a truthful person, and I would say it or not. Like when you that classic case of I should be going to sleep now, and I'll read one more chapter type nonsense. You're kind of going. There was grumps now because we're all working remotely. It didn't have to rush out of too early in the morning, but no, I absolutely adored it. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
And it is now readily available in Easton stores and on eastons.com and everywhere else you buy your books. But absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, Helen. And
Thank you.
We'll see you all again in the real world sometime.
Hello, I'm Helen Carr, Senior Editor with the O'Brien Press, and I worked with Helen Corcoran on her amazing new book, Queen of Coin and Whispers. I just wanted to say what a pleasure it was to work with Helen and to get to know her characters, Leah and Zania. Helen spent a long time working on this book. She'd been living with these characters for a long time before we began to work together, and this was clear from the very outset, from the depth of the characterization and her knowledge of the world. So I really, really enjoyed kind of getting to know the young queen and her spy master, and Helen Corcoran at the same time, as we discussed like the intrigues in court, the dialogue, the plot, sometimes over coffee, sometimes over long emails where we kind of dealt with a lot of details. It was absolutely fascinating. And I just think Helen brought them to life brilliantly on the page. I think readers will really, really enjoy getting into that world and immersing themselves. All the relationships in the book, I think, are very well rounded, very realistic. We see amazing examples of relationships and marriages both same-sex and opposite-sex couples. And of course, the main central relationship in the book is hugely romantic, hugely compelling between Zania and Leah, the two young protagonists. Women also are amazingly represented in this book in a three-dimensional way. They're allowed to be angry, clever, funny, competent, rather than just decorative. Edar is also a hugely multicultural society with people of colour represented at every level of society and within the book as both main characters and supporting characters. So I think The Queen of Coin and Whispers is both a mirror and inspiration for young readers. Certainly, I've been inspired by Leah's, the Queen's idealism, and by both girls' determination to change the status quo, which I think is an amazing message to take from the book today. So congratulations, Helen, on your great work. I really, really hope that we can work together on something again. I hope you have an amazing launch month, launch week, and really, really enjoy the success of the book. I'd also really like to thank Dave O'Callaghan from Eason's for launching this book for us.
Yes, I mean, this book took a while, so I'm not going to be able to thank everyone. And I think I thanked nearly everyone in the acknowledgements anyway. But I'd just like to thank everyone who supported me all these years, who read drafts, who read more drafts than anyone would have. I'd like to thank my agent, Eric Smith, and to everyone in O'Brien, especially Helen, and for helping me get the book right, and for not yelling when she would ask a question. I would reply back with 4 paragraphs when a sentence would do. Thank you especially to Eric for dealing with a lot more anxious emails in the last 3 months than either of us actually expected to be dealing with at this point of the year. And again, thank you to everyone for like O'Brien Press, everyone in marketing and sales and editing, and Ivan and Michael, and to Emma and Bex for the gorgeous like cover and the final like product, and just to Lane and Aoife for helping me with like DebCon, and to Ruth and like Trina just for all the like emails and getting everything for like marketing and publicity in a situation that none of us could have like predicted like at all. Thank you to all the DeVry book sellers for putting up with my laptop and me at the kitchen table for so many years, and for supporting the book when like proofs started going out, and for reviewing it, and for being like excited as it got closer even when the dates changed. And thank you to all the bloggers and reviewers who got early like copies and read it and loved Leah and Zania as much as like me. It means a lot. This book means a lot to me as well. So yeah, basically just thank you for helping me get this book out in the world, and thank you for liking it now that it's real.